Deputy Catherine Connolly.
It would be helpful for us on this side if the questions were answered. That would be helpful with a little less heckling from the colleagues to the right of the minister who's going to answer. I am not one bit reassured. I welcome the pause. However, I'm deeply troubled that at the same time that there's a pause which will allow the committee to look at it, we have reports in the Irish Times, paper of repute, telling us that the government have no intention of changing any of the documents, anything. So it's like we're going to calm the masses. Let me look at your thing in relation to the existing hospital. Yes, the conditions are intolerable. Please don't use up the reply in telling me that. On this side of the House, we've repeatedly called for the hospital to be co-located, but on a site owned by the public and run by the public. What is equally intolerable is your failure, the Taoiseach's failure, the Taoiseach's failure, and the Minister for Health to deal with any of the issues that we're raising here today. Deputy Shortall has raised about rent. You've conveniently ignored it. They're the documents that we got, struggling to read through them, even with my own background. And I look at that and I see a 299-year lease and a provision for rent. And the rent is set out, as has been alluded to already by Deputy Shortall, in relation to what that means. You might explain that, and you might explain the default position when that rent comes into being if the other conditions aren't met. You might say sorry for saying that the delay is on our side when the delay has been consistently on the side of the health group and the Sisters of Charity. You might explain how the gift that we were going to get never materialised. You might explain, as has been asked by Deputy Doherty, why we cannot have the site given over to us in our name. Now, there are many, I've 1 minute left in relation to this. I have struggled with this, and I can see absolutely no reason for all this complexity. If we look at the Senior Counsel's opinion that was commissioned by Uplift, insofar as ownership of the lands are not obtained, the proposed arrangements are Byzantine in their complexity, almost Kafkaesque. In relation to what Dr. Peter Boylan was told in relation to, in 2020, in relation to the ownership, this is what he was told by the National Maternity Hospital lawyers, a plethora of different structures and ownership, a complexity that's not easy. And you're here today telling us that the situation is intolerable in the hospital. Yes, and I'll repeat, equally intolerable is absolutely your failure to deal with the serious concerns that we're raising, that Dr. Boylan has raised, that the 2 dissenting, very distinguished members of the Health Executive Board raised, not to mention the women of Ireland, the men of Ireland who are concerned, and the 3 motions passed unanimously by this stall asking for ownership, public ownership.
Minister.
Firstly, in regard to those reports on the front page of the Irish Times today, as I said, the Cabinet decided on Tuesday to open up all the documentation, make sure it was fully transparent, to allow the Oireachtas Committee examine, question, investigate, and to come back for the Minister of Health to come back to the Cabinet with observations from that. That's what was decided at Cabinet. What will be decided in Cabinet in 2 weeks' time, we'll have to wait and see and decide then. It's not decided in the front page of an Irish newspaper. Can I say, no one, certainly on our side, or in our party, or anyone I've heard government, is casting blame in terms of delay, or saying one side or the other. The central concern, it seems to me from listening in recent years, was the issue of religious interference in procedures in a new institution. I believe that one of the outcome of the delay that has occurred in recent years is that there is a clear legal certainty now that will not be the case, that those concerns can be allayed, can be addressed. Yeah, well, I believe in the constitutional arrangement, in the framework, all the legal analysis and documentation. I refer back to one other article in the Irish Times today where I said, where they went to the various legal outside independent experts and said, do you think there is still the concern in that regard? From what I read, is the vast majority of legal expertise with expertise in the area of medical legal areas is that no, that is no longer, or should no longer be a concern. And it was important that that be addressed. It is complex. It's complex because we do have a tradition. We have a Hollis Street or a Rotunda often going back in their charter or their foundation governance, going back 200 or 300 years in some instances. And yes, co-joining that with another voluntary hospital organisation, and our voluntary structures are strange. Let's be honest, in terms of if you're designing a system from the start, would you design this complex nature of Irish health system where you have these very effective, very flexible, very capable voluntary hospital systems? Probably not. But we do have them. And if we're to CPO the entire voluntary sector, health sector, or you could look into other sectors, well, I'm just asking the question if that is the strategic, because that is a wider debate and a wider question. Then that deserves a slightly different. I know Catherine Day did her analysis and her report in terms of how we manage that, and I believe it can be managed where we retain voluntary health system, but critically, public health, sláinte care based, community first, in the community first, not all hospital and consultant led and centric. That change, I believe, needs to come. This institution won't answer, won't solve, or won't change all those issues. We do need it built. We do need to get a much better service than, not in terms of the building structures, than exists in Hollis Street at the moment. Minister. And for that reason, I look forward to come back to Cabinet in 2 weeks' time to hear what has been said at committee and to make a decision on it. Further delay, in my mind, would not be the right choice.
Deputy Connolly.
Let me try and clarify in 60 seconds. Number one, the government is open to change. Is that what you said? As a result of... You didn't, so government is not open to change. That's very good. We've that clarified. In relation to my concerns are in relation to the documents I've read and the absence of some very important documents. For example, the constitution of the St. Vincent's Health Group. I want to see... Mr. Menton tells us they're evolving into a secular organisation. Evolving. Evolution is slow. I'd like to know where we are in that process of the St. Vincent's Holding Group, or healthcare group, in the evolutionary process. Where are they as a secular organisation? In relation to the complexity, there is no complexity here. The 21st century, a National Maternity Hospital, on the basis of what's happened in our history, which I haven't time to go into, is we have to have it. A National Maternity Hospital on a public site. In relation to the documents that are missing as well, in addition to the constitution that I've mentioned, I'd like to know on what basis the Sisters of Charity were finally happy to give over their share. How did the Vatican allow them to do that and still comply with their ethics and so on? It's really difficult to get it done. I'm really a stickler for time. This needs proper debate in this stall. Thank you.
Minister?
I'm very familiar with St. Vincent's Hospital. It's my local hospital, but also a lot of my family and friends have been treated there. If I can answer your question.
Certainly, but please.
But to answer your question, because you asked me what is the nature of their secular values.
I asked you, is the government open to change? And you said no.
If I can just, what I heard you ask me, if I can.
I apologise. I apologise.
But you asked, how can we sure, as I said, that there isn't, that the ethos of St. Vincent's is secular, is what I heard, one of the questions you asked. And my answer to that, again, one of the documents I read today, I think an analysis looked at their objectives or their mission statement at the moment. And actually, it is, whether it's religious or secular, they're actually values that I think we would all agree on. They're not two separate, completely different worlds. The values they want to deliver, and I have seen them deliver as a hospital, is the value and protection of life, the Hippocratic Oath, and treating patients with fairness and equity is I understand, in their mission statement, in their objectives. It is secular, but that doesn't mean it's kind of a complete divorce from the past. They've often done a lot of that. And I have seen that in first hand, the incredible care that they provide to the patients. Now, we need to make sure that those skills they have are also available to the women in the National Maternity Hospital.
Minister,
not an ambulance ride away, but a corridor beside it. And that's why this whole approach has been taken.
Thank you, Minister.